Hello everyone. How are you? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Vanessa. I am an indie author. I live in Toronto, Canada, and I publish under the pen name A&Sage. I write YA, mostly fantasy, paranormal, and a bit of fantasy sci-fi mashup here and there. If you are new here, then you should know I talk a lot about the business of writing, tips and tricks for writing, some different advice for things that I have picked up along the way. And I talk a lot about also entrepreneurship because aside from being an author, I also run a few other businesses and I do other things as well, which I think is important to note. So if that sounds like something that is up your alley, then I'd love it if you would subscribe and join this growing community that I am so humbled and proud to be a part of. I love making these videos for you guys, and I'm so happy to be able to do that every single week, to just chat with you and talk to you about all things writing and entrepreneur and planner related. So with that said, and with the introduction out of the way, today we have a really interesting kind of different video that I'm talking about. It does have to do with writing, but it doesn't have to do with writing specifically on the writing style or any of that advice. It comes from a question that I had from a subscriber actually on one of my videos. And when I mentioned that I have my own publishing company that I publish under, and they asked me what the benefits are and why I chose to start a publishing company and not just publish under my name, like my personal name or my pen name. So there's a few reasons of why I decided to start a publishing company. And I thought we could do a video of kind of what I think the pros are, or why you would want to, maybe not pros, but kind of why you would want to, because if before you start a publishing company, you should really ask yourself, why do I need this? And I will tell you why I thought I needed it and why I chose to start a publishing company for myself. And then we can talk about just kind of the basics of what you need when you start a publishing company. As you grow, there's other things you're going to need. There's other reasons why you might have one. But this is kind of just like a starter of why you would want one, and what you'd need to get one started. So the why, some of the whys, or at least one of the main whys when you even Google having a publishing company, or what other authors will say, is it gives you almost an air of professionalism. So I know it sounds strange to say it that way, but having a publishing company imprint, it gives you more, not just a professional feel, but it just kind of legalizes it almost a bit better. So when you're publishing a book, so if you're publishing strictly on Amazon, you have the option to have an imprint or not to have an imprint. If you don't have an imprint, I'm not sure how it works. I've always had an imprint because I've always had this. I started the publishing company as soon as I started publishing, pretty much. But if you don't have an imprint, it might say self-published, or it might say indie, something like that. For places like Ingram Spark, the imprint it's one of those necessary things if you're publishing with them. However, some people will tell you that you need to have a publishing company in order to put something in that imprint, but that's not correct. You don't need, that imprint doesn't have to be a publishing company with Ingram Spark. It can be your legal name. So your birth certificate or whatever your legal name is, that could be your imprint. And so for me, the main thing was that I did not want, when I first started publishing, I did work with Ingram Spark quite a lot in those days. I did not start with just Amazon. I was wide when I started, and I'm wide now again. I was only exclusive to Amazon for a short part of my writing career. But when I started, I did not want my personal name as my imprint to show up anywhere, and that will show up everywhere. It will also show up on your ebooks as well if you are going through Ingram Spark where the imprint is concerned. But the reason it's there is because if bookstores order your books, or just for the legalities of it, I believe that Ingram Spark would need an imprint or your name just for tax purposes and just to say like this is who we're paying royalties to, right? So that imprint is always there. So having that imprint be a publishing company, it just looks a bit more professional, it's more clean, and it's not your personal name. It doesn't say indie published or anything like that. So that just to me was one reason that I really wanted to start my own publishing company. The other reason, and this was probably my main reason, was that I wanted to have other business ventures in the future that were under this publishing name. So I did want to have other businesses that had to do with writing later in the future. Now, when I started writing, I did not know what those businesses were going to be. Now, I have a cover design business. I have courses, design courses, cover design courses. I will be having writing courses coming up as well. I'm going to be doing talks and things like that, right? So there's more and more building. And it's coming under this umbrella of my publishing company, which is Cauldron Press. So this one big umbrella is housing my A&Sage pen name. It's housing Cauldron Press Designs, Cauldron Press Academy right now, and a few others that I'm going to be adding in the future. So I did know that I wanted to have other businesses that will kind of sit under this big umbrella, and I didn't want them to be disjointed. Like if I opened like an online shop or anything like that, like I didn't want them to be disjointed. I wanted everything under one umbrella to make sense because everything was niched down to writing, publishing, and anything creative having to do with that. So another reason was the possibility of incorporating. So this is more like a tax benefit reason, but I wanted to have the possibility to incorporate this publishing company in the future. Now, I don't know how it works anywhere in the world, and I am not a lawyer or an accountant or anything, so you'll have to take this with a grain of salt. This is just what I know from my accountant. You're not obligated to incorporate. Obviously, you can continue to work as in Canada at least, you can continue to work as a freelancer, as a sole proprietor, and all of that. But once you do incorporate, when you reach a certain threshold of income to incorporate, it gives you certain tax breaks and tax benefits. And so when I first started, while I was not making an income of any kind to even consider incorporation, or turning my publishing company into a corporation, I did like the idea of having this goal of growth. And if I get there, I wanted the option to be able to incorporate quickly because everything would have already been set up. I also wanted to have consistent branding. So I wanted to have some sort of overall branding, for my books, for courses, for anything, and having like a logo, a brand name of a publishing company that everything kind of sat under. It just made sense for me at the time when I was starting, and it still obviously makes sense now, even though I do have different websites, different everything for all the different parts under Cauldron Press. It all sits under Cauldron Press, right? And so aside from my author website, which I'm keeping separate, cauldronpress.ca has everything else under it. And so I kind of wanted like a consistent look, consistent brand for myself, for my business. It just, it appealed to me visually and just simplistically, just kind of made everything simpler in my mind. And then the last reason that I really wanted to have a publishing company is to own ISBNs for copyright purposes. Now, you can own ISBNs without a publishing company. 100%. You can buy them under your personal name. But again, those ISBNs, at least the way they work in Canada, where they're given to you, they will be sitting under your personal name. So the imprint on your ISBNs will be your personal name. And I did not want that for the same reason I didn't want to have an imprint of my personal name in the first place. I just did not feel comfortable with having my personal name on there. I did not like how it looked. I just thought it looked more professional with a publishing company attached to an ISBN. It also made it easier for me copyright-wise, where I can say that this ISBN belongs to Cauldron Press. And so when issues arise with copyright, as they do, especially right now, there's so much pirating happening out there of books that authors are having to prove, especially to Amazon, that's run by bots for the most part. They are having to prove their own copyright to their ownership of their books. And the fastest and easiest way to do that is to show that you own the ISBN. So if you are showing, you can show that you own it under your personal name, but since my imprint is all under a publishing company, you can simply say Cauldron Press owns the rights to this ISBN. And if you are incorporated, that carries a bigger weight attached to it when you're trying to prove your rights to your own books. Silly that we have to do it, but such is life these days. There's pirates everywhere. Now, those were my kind of main reasons. So for the most part, I wanted a hub that will house everything. I wanted to be able to incorporate. I wanted to have a publishing house, like professional imprint. And I just wanted to brand myself and my author career under a publishing company and not under just my author name, specifically also because if I decided to write in other genres and I had author names, different pen names, it would just be really convoluted for just tax, for income, for all of that. It just seemed easier to just file as Cauldron Press, and the pen names kind of fed into that. Now, what you'll need. So if you've decided that, you know what, like I've checked off all these Y's, it makes sense for me to go ahead and start my own company, publishing company. What you'll need. So on the visual, the building visual perspective, you obviously need a name. So come up with a name, research a name. I came up with Cauldron Press because the press part seemed appropriate for publishing, but also it was open-ended enough that I could do like more creative and design with it if I needed to. Like if I want to start a magazine, I can. But come up with a name, make sure that nobody else has the name, same way you would for anything else. You'll need a logo or some kind of branding. So you want to develop some sort of logo. The simpler, the better, I would say. Don't go too crazy with it. Even like I've seen a lot of people, so that, let's say, write fantasy, and then if they start a publishing company, they'll do like a super over the top fantasy kind of logo. I would not recommend that. Like I have the Cauldron is very fantasy-esque, right? And I do write a lot of fantasy, but I also write YA, so it's more whimsical, right? It's younger. But my logo is very simple. Like it's very graphic, it's very simple. And I kept it that way because you just never know which way your publishing company or you as an author, and just whatever other business you feed into it, which way it's going to go, right? So you want to make sure that you keep your doors open and don't make it too over the top. So yeah, think of branding, think of your branding colors, your fonts you're going to use. Branding is also your values, your message that you want to have for your publishing company. If you decide that you're going to actually start like a company where you're going to later publish other authors, which is always a possibility, just think of the branding for that as well, right? Just, I think that the more minimal you can keep this at the beginning, the better, because you just never know which way you're going to go. And you'll need a website. So you will need either a website that, like I said, is like a hub that has a menu that feeds out to different websites, which is what I have. Or you'll need just a general landing page website, something to let people know that you are a legit company, that it's not just like a name you slapped on the page. From the business standpoint, some of the main things you'll need to figure out your business structure. So are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be, I believe LLC is what they do in the States. In Canada, they incorporate. How are you going to basically run your business? So what's the structure of your business going to be at the beginning? So usually the easiest way to do this at the beginning is you start with sole proprietorship until you need to move on up, right? But again, talk to an accountant, a legal person about this, because this is just what the information I've been given. You'll need to register your business. So you'll need to either register the name of your business or the business itself. And there are different things. And again, depending where you live, there's going to be different rules for this. But business registration is important because it's A, for taxes, B, for just the general owning the business. Registering the name of the business can be very important for copyright, so nobody else can register their business with that name. So you kind of want to look at that. And you'll need a business bank account and or business credit card. So once you start a company, when you're no longer just working as basically a freelancer for yourself, when it's not just your name, when you're working under a company name, it is pretty important to have your finances separated for the company, and you would pay yourself a salary. And if you are kind of interested in knowing more about like the business of being an author, I did do a video on the business of being an author. And so I'll try to link it somewhere either here or in the description. But you'd want to have a separate bank account or a separate credit card, like both. I do have both right now that I use, just because it makes it easier to separate your expenses, and makes it easier when it's time to pay taxes, and it makes it easier when it's time to pay yourself a salary, especially if you are going to be incorporating anything. So yeah, those are kind of my reasons and a few little tips of why you might want to think about getting a publishing company in place, and why I did it. It's not the same for everybody. I know a lot of authors who don't do this. A lot of authors who I know a lot of authors who don't buy their own ISBNs too. So it's not everything is the same for everybody. Everybody has their own way of doing things. This is just my way. And so I figured since somebody asked, it would be good to answer. And if you do have any other questions, or if you have any other kind of topics you want me to discuss in the video, I'd love it if you comment below and let me know, because I always want to make videos that you guys are interested in seeing, of course. And so like I have a lot of ideas for videos, but if it's something specific you want to see I haven't talked about yet, then make sure to comment and I'll put it on my list. I have a list going and I try to get to as many of them as I can. So I will answer it one way or another. If I don't think that I can make a whole video about it, then I will definitely message you or answer you or comment to your comment. So you'll get an answer regardless. So I love chatting with you guys. And so just chat with me, basically. Let's be friends. So I hope that that was kind of useful information for you if you are considering it, or if you're kind of wondering why some authors open publishing companies and why others don't. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. And as always, I hope you stay magical, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.